Hello again. It's actually been quite a few days here uh, since I posted. It may be back to back to you, but it's been quite a few days. And what I've been doing is I'm waiting. You can see clearly they got things cleaned up. Again, it's bored, waiting for the finish hone for sizing because I'm waiting for those pistons. But anyway, they cleaned it up good. I got her squirted down with WD-40. They honed the lifter bores. They line honed it. Um, so now I'm gonna go ahead and bolt the heads on. A couple of screws to hold the heads down. Put my intake manifold on, my valley cover on, and start to take a look at some of the brackets and stuff. I can't wait another 6 weeks. I got to start monkeying around. So that's what's going on. I got it back here just a few hours ago, bolted the transmission up to it, and then slapped the engine mounts on, dropped the tranny into the transmission mount, and now I'm gonna start to monkey around with it, and I'll get some shots along the way, so we can stay current with what's going on. But figure I might as well, while I'm waiting for the fuel injectors, I may as well start to get kind of a semblance of what it's going to look like, where the master cylinder is going to go, the routing for the cabling, the routing for the wire harness, all that stuff. There's a pile of stuff that I could be just kind of dinking around with as we go here. So there you have it. I got to figure out how to get this camera off of wide angle. That toe is awful, and those tires are way bigger than they really are. Anyway, moving right along. Thanks, guys. All right, just thought I'd get a couple quick shots. I threw the valve covers on. Front cover, water pump, intake. They're just sitting on there. And it turns out excuse me, this intake, I need the slow side here because of the oil fill. And these are going to be things that are going to go on constantly. But the oil fill is also slid back a little ways. You can see right there, about 3/8 of an inch, because I'm hitting the dang gum manifold. But that's what's going to happen. Interference. Now, I don't know what I'm going to do exactly, if I'm going to relieve that, weld in a piece of flat, mark it, God only knows what. But that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm going to do. Start to kind of try to get a feel for where she all looks best. You can see the center line of the axle or the shock towers. Engine setting completely behind it, which is what I wanted. Got plenty of space to the firewall, which is what I wanted. The dipstick tube sits in the hole, and actually I can tweak this a little bit. You see, there's always a little bit of tweak. It's a dipstick tube, but the body is coming up 1/4 of an inch. I don't have any of the rubber mounts on, so as long as I have clearance, and I do, then I don't have to worry about it at this point. Now I'm going to address the low lights or the highlights, however you want to say it. But that's get all the fitment in and start to monkey around. But she looks just wonderful. That's just one huge looking engine inside of that bay. It'll all fit under the top of the hood, but clearly, as you look, the hood sides just are certainly not going to work without bulges in them. But that's all part of the fun. Radiator will fit in here, probably somewhere a little over the. I don't remember, but somewhere a little over the rack, more than likely. But if I can get it a little more forward, I'll have to address that once I get the fenders and that stuff on. Well, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with the look. I'm pretty happy with how it's coming along. So again, I just set that stuff on there and to see how the tower of power is gonna look in there. Thanks for watching, guys. I do appreciate it. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate the suggestions. I've learned so much over the course of this build just by taking the constructive comments that you provide. Thank you. Well, good morning. Show a little bit more on the progress. Wound up picking up a brand new Pomida premium oil filter. $1.79. Well, that was on sale. I don't know what the original price was. Let me take a peek here. $2.19. $2.19. So they got 40 cents off. That's a pretty hellacious discount. Anyway, I don't know if you could buy, if Pomida, the chain is still going, but I highly doubt it. It's still a pH 8A. And it still works for mock-up. It's a nice deep can, and it's a big filter. So it helps when I mock it up. You know, this is mounted onto there. And when I mock up, then I can get the hell out of the way. You know, get my clearances and all that kind of thing. So I got that, and then I welded on the 102 bung. And got decent, you know, checking everything for clearance. Got decent distances for the fuel lines and, of course, the oil filter and all that kind of thing. Going to the other side. You can see my marks. There you go, the two green lines. The one to the right is what I'm going to use. I was just kind of comparing and contrasting between where I would be behind the firewall, because I don't want to necessarily have everything standing out. The starter motor is in front of this bolt hole. So, you know, it's all out in that area. So I'm not concerned about there being interference there. So, again, those are the little trinkets, and keep pounding away at them. And we'll keep going. So I'll get that on today, or this morning. I'll get that bung welded on, and then I'm going to start to address that oil fill tube. Thanks. Hi guys.
And then of course there's a few mechanical things I need to sort out.
It's hot.
This is one item.
But I'm building a part and a piece. And I think I showed you a little bit of this. Kind of looking for stuff as we go here. But I'm going to flip it over and show you what's going on here. Okay, so when I line this hole up and the back hole up, and I sight straight down, you can see that the tube that I've pulled out, I have this pressed in. I have this tube pressed in for the oil fill. There's a couple of things going on here. Number one, it was interfering with the manifold. So I bought a little section of 1x2 channel aluminum rectangular tubing. I chucked it up in my four-jaw. You can still see the setup right there. Okay, so I chucked it up in the four-jaw, and I blew this hole and sized it to a press fit again. Each side is the same. So at this point, I could just barely get a lead in. Oops, sorry. I can just barely get a lead in, and she sticks. I did catch that with my feet. Okay. So we can test just by hand. I got a very slight taper on this. I did that. I also threaded it with left-handed threads when I started, and then I... Anyway. So each side will accept that press fit. Now I gotta pull it apart. Okay. So what I'm going to do is make a ring for this side. Okay. And then I'll press it into here. Where am I at here? Into here. And then I'll be able to clock it because I can see the water, the pressure. Sending unit is right there. So I can clock it. I can clock it anywhere. I'm just going to try to sight it up. I don't want to hit the fuel rail, but that's up here. And now I can fill it with oil. I'll polish the whole thing up. I'm out of the way by about 1/2 of an inch now of the intake manifold. I provided enough room for access to the bolt for the distributor hold down and the oil pressure sending unit. So I'm gonna have a cow here, but anyway, that's my plan. So we'll cut out a couple of pieces and roll them to TIG this up. Put a standoff in here. I might even, you can see where I was drawing on the interference. Clean this up, and I might just I'll press this in. I don't know. If I can hold these apart, I'll press this in and just touch TIG it on each side so it doesn't come up. Because once this is in, I can just tap this ding, 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 to press it into the manifold here. One way or the other. Anyway, I'm going to I'll make the collars, I'll make the end pieces, and there you have it. There you have it. Sorry about the poor video, but I mean, I should have had a stand or something like that to make this a little easier to understand. But I guess you can see the concept. You can see the concept of getting it out of the way. And those kinds of things happen, but I think actually in the end, after that's all said and done, that'll look kind of cool anyway. All right, thanks folks. All right. So I just took a piece of 1/8 inch, sheared it. This is 1/8 inch, 1 inch, 3/4 opening. This is then 13/16 in width, just so that I can get it a 32nd of an inch over each side, right? Get in there with a good TIG. I bent it in my roller, so I started in here. I started in the inch and a half. Then I took it over and tapped her in to the 2 inch so I can get the memory get the memory out of it on the smaller diameter. And so then that'll just TIG weld into there, and then I'll clean it up. I lightly filed, that's why it's in the vise. I lightly filed so that I can get that radius in there like that, and get this one in here like that. And you can see there's a little bit of a flat spot at the end of it, but that'll fill just fine. And then I'm going to try to hold it up, but it's filled at the bench. But then I'll be able to get the whole thing looking kind of cute, right? Kind of cute. Probably radius. Once you get that TIG weld in, probably just do a file radius on this and make it look like a one-piece cast or formed casting, I guess. Yeah. So there's my scrap pieces from nibbling away at the corners. Cleaned them up with the benchtop belt sander. Set it 90 degrees so that I can get both sides the same. and then just dressed with the file, kept dressing in with the file. I got some material rolled over because I just finished, cleaning it, but that piece will work good. That'll work very good. I'm happy with it. Well, hello again. We're back. I bolted the front cover, just a couple of bolts holding it on. I just want to know where the front of the engine is. I laid the Dodge or Chrysler Corp Dodge Ram wiring harness on. Water temp. And I think I might be able to actually get him in here somewhere, maybe even in the side, under the bolt or off the front. So I'll have to drill and tap that. All of the injectors fit. However, the convoluted tubing is, well, convoluted. It's not in very good condition. But I'll pull all this off, and I will route the harness underneath the manifold, so the wires will plug up, and all of this mass will be gone and out of the way. I got this. Don't recall what that was for. Of course, I got the diagram. I got this 2-pin. No idea. Another 2-pin with some sort of a different style of shield on it. And she's a little cooked, I think. I don't know. Anyway, those I'll get figured out. Down here is just the coil wire, because on those, the coil was in the front on that bank. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with that yet. In the back, then, all this spaghetti in the back runs back to the back of the transmission. There's a loom on the back. So I got my knock sensor and all three of these are transmission controls. There's my firewall cable, and that covers it. That's my knock sensor. Got my distributor somewhere right here, and nice thing about a Magnum is the distributor and the block configuration is so similar. So there's my oil sending unit. There's a piece that I made. And of course this guy will clear. Hide all that. And again, this loom will be looped into the firewall and around about the midway, before the gear selector. But midway I put the brackets back on, if you recall from earlier videos. The only thing is the O2 sensor, so this guy loops back up, and he is for the ECU, the control module. But I'll have to go in and check, because these are all 2-pin, which is probably the case for the O2 sensors. Even though I ordered them, they are 4-pin or 4-wire. So those must have heaters. I don't know if I can use them or not, but in both cases, I come down. Let's see, that's all trans. These I don't have figured out yet, and maybe those are the oxygen sensors. I honestly, I just don't know, but I'll get that figured out. But the reality is that the wiring is going to be relatively simple. The harness, I'll just have to strip all the convoluted tubing off, and rewire, get some small zip ties, get my harness set up correctly, but it will flow easily underneath the intake manifold. I got to get this and this run to those holes, which will be 3/4 tap pipe instead of half. I'm going to open them up. And the fuel line is routed. You can see it takes off from the back of that rail. It goes down, and in this case, instead of routing it close to the manifold, I routed it down on top of the bell housing. Came up to a T. T goes down to the fuel regulator, and comes up and grabs this side. The regulator is down. You can just see the hose here, and the fuel line, and I'll clamp him against the firewall here. So everything will be tucked, everything will be hidden. It should work out pretty slick. So I'm pretty happy with the results so far. Very happy with the results so far. Of course, I'm just, again, very slowly moving and progressing through the exciting part. So I will obviously have to mount these, get everything mounted up, get the wire underneath, and get things kind of finessed or figured out. Everything here is, I guess, done with the rails. The distances and the parameters are all correct. But I do want to fire up I want to put fuel in the tank, pressurize it, and check for leaks. I'll pull the valve covers off when I do that, by the way. And make sure that I've got a good seal. I know I got the original injectors in here, and I know some of the O-rings are in pretty tough shape. But, I mean, if I get a leak past an O-ring, a drip past an O-ring, that's not the big deal. What I'm looking for is all the connections and making sure that's all good. So, all in all, it's going very well, and I'm very happy with the progress. And we'll keep forging ahead. But can you see it? Can you see it coming? You can see the two holes in the bottom of the block are covered by this housing. But that gives me two great mounting points on both sides for brackets. Maybe if you've looked at these engines online, but very clearly I can fit my power steering pump in there. On this side, it's just a GM Type A. I think it's a Type A. Pretty sure it's a Type A, the most common older style. And depending on my hose routing, but certainly one can get an alternator in here and turn early and down, or whatever I need to do to get that, or turn down right away. But I can get the alternator in here. Up top, I've got that hole and that hole, and of course the water pump bolts, and I can get an AC pump on here. And boy, I think that's about it, isn't it? Probably get a supercharger on there, but that ain't gonna happen. Turbo. But so I have the faculties for mounting everything up. It's moving along quite well. Shit, I got enough room. I might be able to even snake my AC lines in alongside the block and come up. So those are hidden. Lots of opportunities, and happy with the progress so far. I'm dreaming again. So I'll let it go. You guys have a great day, and there's the status report. Okay, a little bit more on the piece. Obviously, you see it's finished, but just the bottom side, you see the TIG welds. I had them put 4 spot welds in to keep that. It was pressed in, but keep it from pushing up, because does it press harder into the valley cover than it did into here? That kind of thing. Then I just cleaned it up with 180 grit, take it to a number 4 finish. It's aluminum, it's not stainless, but I mean, that turned out really nice. I'm happy with it. This I did do a number 4 finish, and I'll have to come back and get that all cleaned up again. I don't know why I do that, because it's in the engine bay, because it's just fun. Anyway, this will press into there. That'll press into the manifold, and you got yourself a wonderful offset oil fill solution. It's like a squirrel ran by, right? You got all that put in there, put the engine in, start putting stuff on, and whew, squirrel runs by. Let's do that. But it looks cool. It'll be a solution. Thanks, guys. Just got it back. No weights. But it's only 29 inches, 29 3/8 inches center to center. But balanced. And I picked up the new U-joints. One's a crossover. They're 1330s, and one's a 1330 to a 1310. Yeah. 5-1203X. That's a 1330 to 1310 because the 9-inch Ford has a 1310 yoke on it. And the Dodge, and these are standard GM or Dodge steel 3-inch drive shaft ends, and I had those. I machined off the ends. That might have been in another video from a drive shaft that I changed out on this when I went to a different rear differential. So there we have it. I just hit it with a coat of black. Gonna let her cure out. Then I'll assemble that guy later on, just to kind of keep things going. Still trying to figure that out. Get all this figured out. Oh, and also, one other thing, I didn't even, on the roll, that box right there, straight back from Hot Heads, rebuilt rocker assemblies, just came in the mail today, sitting on my doorstep. So now I can yank the heads off, squirt those, get those all assembled, got the new valves, everything's done on the heads, paint them up, get them ready to go. So that's another level of completion as we work ourselves from the top to the bottom. Thanks. Hi guys. So I've been working on a few things. You can see all the convoluted tubing is new and clean. I made a few extensions. This will be the intake air temp. That'll plug in underneath the intake somewhere. This is the coolant temp. That'll plug in on this side, go under the manifold, and plug in on this side. And then I ran all of my, that's the AC alternator field wire. And then all my injectors then, where am I at? 1, 2, 3, 4, there. I'm routing so that I'm not in the way when I come up and go in. I'm not in the way of course, this port, obstructions. But this then will tuck underneath there, and I'll probably do a clamp here on that bolt, clamp here to hold it up in there, or hold it back in there. So nice hide. Yeah, this is going to come up, and you're going to see all these come up, but just those 4 wires come up. Of course, on the other side, it's a little busier because you got your throttle position sensor, your IAC, and your map. But it's the same deal. There's a lot more wires in this, so it's got a bigger tube, but it's also going to tuck up under there, and these will route up and out. So I had to do quite a bit of extending. You can see I've got the proper wire for it too. This is actually a wire from a manufacturer, but it's the correct gauge. It's 18 gauge, and it's electrical wire. It's pre-tinned. It's the right stuff for these kinds of contacts. But anyway, I had to lengthen, so I would snip and lengthen all of them, but on either end of the convoluted tubing, I didn't want to sacrifice the wire color. So I maintained the wire color other than the splice. So 3 and 4 inch extensions on this side to route it from underneath the manifold and up. So everything along these lines up on the top side is now complete, other than I'd like to get some 1/4 inch convoluted instead of the 3/8 for the routings underneath, just to protect. They're wrapped in tape, but just to protect them. I like the convoluted tubing because it leaves airspace and all that kind of thing. You know, that might sit on top of something that's relatively hot, but it leaves some, it's got dead air in there. And so now I'm down to the O2 wiring, which when I pulled the transmission out, this is all from the same 2000 Dodge Ram 1500 two-wheel drive 5.2. When I pulled the transmission out and I moved the exhausts over, I didn't pull the O2 sensors out, but I clipped the wires because I couldn't get the connectors removed. If you've worked on these kinds of things in the past, you know that getting up and around the O2 sensors is fine, but a lot of times connectors underneath, you can't pull the red safety clips. You can't. Everything is so, you'll just break the connectors. So needless to say, I just cut them because there's no use of the connector at that point. So I've got my wideband 4-wire or heated O2 sensors, and I showed you those earlier. And so now I'm going to do some weather pack connections right here, right next to it. I'm going to go to a different style, so I'll put an end on here, but it'll be a weather pack. I'm going to pull that retainer because I like that concept. And these have, where is that at here? A slide. Yeah, it was this. A slide in them for that pin, that socket retainer, plastic retainer. So the other thing is on this ECU engine control unit, or ECM engine control module, it had a pre and post catalytic converter, or forward and aft, or primary and secondary O2 sensors. So I originally I welded the bungs in for both sides, but this ECU only has the pre and post, and you can't put the post on the other side and the pre-cat on this side and the post on the other side. That isn't going to work. So I'm going to leave the bungs in, put an O2 sensor, which will be dead on that side, then put a live one on this side because that's the side the harness is on, and we'll go that route. If there's any other ideas related to it, let me know. But at this point, that's the journey that I'm going to take, and then the post, I'm just going to keep the wire in there. I'm not going to put cats on this. I can't. They won't fit. But I keep the wire. I'm going to cap the wire and put it back in the harness. So that's that. I got to deal with the coil lead on these. Of course, the coil ran all the way around the front. I pulled it back. I don't want a coil hanging off here. I think that's goofy. I'm trying to do some research on why the distance. And it could be RF, radio frequency noise. It could be any number of things. But they had a coil lead coming up on the LAs, on the Magnum, Dodge Magnums, or whatever, the Magnum series engine, where that wire went up along the harness all the way back to the disty, or all the way back to the harness. But they put the coil way up here, and the coil wire, pardon me, went up all the way back to the distributor. A very long coil wire. And to me, that's fine, but it's freaking ugly. So I might isolate that coil behind the firewall or down underneath or something like that. Try to maintain some distance, so I haven't shortened that wire at all. At this point, I still want to do a little bit more research on trying to address the why. But at this point, you got to have a couple of wires coming up from the injectors, and of course that side of the throttle body. And I had it mocked up, and you'll get to see this very, very shortly. But the whole point is that I don't like the wire sticking up. So I hid most of it, which is good. All that goes down on top of the transmission. I'm not worried about that. I need access to it right now to make sure I get everything complete. And I'm probably about 50-60% done with modifying the harness to work with the Hemi. So at this point, I'm going to focus on the O2 sensor at this time, and get the connectors put on it, and then just keep the updates coming as I make progress. Thank you very much. Hey guys, we're going to spend a little time looking at the intake manifold today. So we saw earlier that I had all the hoses or wires routed underneath. I used 3/8 convoluted tubing on this. What do they call it? Wire loom or something like that. Anyway, convoluted tubing. And I looked around, and I just don't like how fat it is. It's got that rigidity where you can get a bend in it and all that. But I went and looked on Amazonian, and the cloth covered wire looks so much better for anything coming up. So all this loom tucked under here, and then go to a cloth covered wiring for all the injectors and the sensors that are lying underneath the manifold. That's what you're going to come up and see. Too big, too bulky. Today I started working on the pipe fittings for the Dash 12. So if you recall, the thermostat housing was Dash 12 fittings. I ordered the two straights, two 90s, in an effort to get this put together. Today, I'll put this up here. I grabbed the manifold, and where there was a half-inch pipe for a heater hose or a sensor or anything like that, on these two corners, there was nothing here. I drilled and tapped it. Drilled and tapped it when I had it on the mill. When I did all the injector holes, I also drilled and tapped those for half-inch, so I had four corners because I knew I was going to use my heater hose. I knew I was going to have to have an engine temp sensor, at least one. And in this case, that turns out to be the case. And then I wanted to move enough water out of each head because this is a dry manifold. Enough water out of each head through here. So I started with half-inch. I didn't know which direction I was going to put the manifold. Now I've settled on that direction where the front, as advertised, is now the back. So this port, as advertised, is on the back, but of course this is a Chrysler dry manifold. I may have stated this earlier. This cylinder head can go on that side, that can go on this side. They're mirror images of each other. So obviously without any water, coolant, or thermostat housing or any other casting as part of the manifold, you can put this on either direction. So I open those front holes up, and I'm just going to line it up here. I don't have any of this other stuff pressed in or anything like that yet. And the original intent was to take the 90s, get in here and snake down underneath here, but you can see with the size of this tube, it's just not going to be practical to get it down underneath here and bring it out down here. So I am going to have to come up with a different solution, and I'm thinking, something maybe along those lines. Something that looks okay, but not gaudy. And then I'll have to build a bracket going down and all that kind of thing. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, And then you think about the water up here and getting the air out of it and all that. But that's what happens. But that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm working on. That is what I am working on. Continuing to nitpick. I think I'm going to move to the brake booster because I'm about where I need to be. I'll try to get some hose. I probably have some hose so I can start to mock that up a little bit, get that mount made. Maybe I'll do that. But that's where I'm at, right? I gotta just kind of finish that up, but everything else at this point is a run home, not a home run, is a run home because I'm about finished. So I'm getting down to the simple stuff now. So that's the status. That's where I'm at today. Thanks. Here's a little bit closer shot to those. And then I want to come down and show you. Okay, so I originally thought, well, you can see I've got a nipple screwed into here and then a fitting. And the sheer size of a Dash 12, although it's not huge, right? This fits a 3/4 hose or maybe it's a 5/8 hose or something. I don't know. But the sheer size of it and the fact that this plane going 90, I mean, no matter how close I get, I'm going to intersect there. I had dreams, right? I had dreams of keeping everything tucked in here, but the physics aren't there. And, you poke around at what other guys' ideas are, and you just don't find any. You don't find any. Of course, there's not a ton of people doing stuff like this, but I mean, just poking around, you don't find any. I might have found one or two concepts. I've certainly seen concepts really come over the top. I may have found one where they went underneath, or two that generated the I think I can. They were not effective. They were not neither artistic nor were they practical. They were more than likely failures. in the physics side of it, of actually keeping the engine cool. So I guess what I'm saying is, reluctantly, I'm going over the top. Thanks. Okay, we got a little progress video going on. Now, we can see that on this Hemi, look at that. I mean, just a nice, beautiful channel to run your wiring down through. Excuse me, a lot of pop here. Anyway, so I got both looms down. This loom is a little bigger than this one. Of course, the convoluted tubing size steps up as you gain distance and more wire into it in both cases. But you can see that all this noise here, get that down to a smaller size with the cloth. Get the diameter out of there. And that kind of helps you understand what I'm trying to accomplish there with that. Okay, so I've got the valley pan on. I opted to go for 1 1/4 inch long 5/16 set screws. Man, I think that's just wonderful. So I run all those in, put the pan on. That holds the wiring in. It's certainly got room, to breathe. The only concern would be the exhaust crossover, which I'm not using. It's blanked off, so that'll just fill with pressure right away. My assumption is that'll fill with pressure right away. And it'll over-temp only as the transfer of heat from the engine, but that the coolant will keep the head, in that 200 degree range, which is perfectly fine for that wiring and that convoluted tubing. So my theory is that I'm not going to have a problem with the wiring, and that if I get this 3/8 diameter down to 1/4 inch, it'll look a lot sexier, and you'll only see that modest wiring coming up for the injectors. I did work on the manifold. I did wind up going and getting this mocked up with the hose, and actually about like it sets right there is about like it's going to set in the car. So I'm going to fab up a mount from here down to here. I may need to pull this off and add a couple of more, triangulate or add a little bit of structure to that, so that in both cases, actually in that case and on that housing, you just seal up the studs or screws or stud them, whatever it takes, but just to make sure that I don't have any leaks. But then that kind of comes out, and we'll get a look at it, but it kind of comes out a little bit of an angle facing toward this side of the radiator. So, and it stays below the throttle body. So now as I kind of look toward my engine cover theory that I've got going on here, yeah, and again, I don't know, but I think I can tie that in to look like something beautiful. So I'm moving forward with this like that, and moving forward with this. So now I'm going to lift that body up just a little bit, jack it up so I can get clearance and get that the wiring and there's just stuff between the engine block and the firewall. Push back in, run to the sensors on the transmission, get all the connections done, and so my wire routing can be continuous. And I was talking with somebody last night, and I got to thinking, the only thing that I need on this is that alternator feed the charging wire going back to the starter, and then everything under the dash. But this engine control unit is relatively comprehensive. It's got my AC inputs. Is it on? I got to drive my outputs right to turn it on. I guess there'll be a little bit more wiring. But some of that I/O is actually right in the controller too. Yeah, those are inputs and outputs. So I'm randomizing it again, but I'm thinking that this is going to work pretty freaking slick. So it's been a good day so far. Thanks, everybody. More to come.